be honest with you, I don't think you could pull it off without me, Rob.
This week's movie, Who Am I? After the brutal murder of a colleague, my former group of superhero companions and I begin an investigation that could change history forever. Stay tuned to find out. You're listening to the Banana Reel Movie Podcast, episode 44. Warning, this show contains spoilers and coarse language, so you've been forewarned. Hey there, folks. We are the Theatre Gorillas. My name is Carlos.
I'm Heath.
And it's just us two this evening. And before we get the show onto the road, the usual stuff, which is our site is theatregorillas.com. Our Twitter is @theatregorillas. Facebook is facebook.com/theatregorillas. YouTube, just search for Theatre Gorillas. Can I say our name enough?
I don't think so. I think we should add Theatre Gorillas. We should start using it like Smurf, where it's both a noun and adjective and a verb.
And there's Gmail, theatregorillas@gmail.com.
Or there's Smurf at smurf.com.
Don't confuse people.
Don't sue us, Smurfs.
Oh, right.
Don't Smurf us.
Don't Theatre Gorillas. Before we kick into this week's episode, I just wanted to have a quick, real short talk on Doctor Strange trailer drop.
Oh, yeah, that was so good.
So many people were sort of scared that this movie was just going to be bombed, like be a bomb or whatever. But I always had faith in it because it was something different and unique. And then the trailer dropped and it just solidified my thoughts on it.
Oh, look. If the trailer's anything to go by, one, it's going to be a visually stunning movie. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous to look at. I think they're going to have a look at the way that magic is used in the Marvel Universe in a very beautiful, unique way. I think we're actually going to see, but I think we're going to see like a great use of these characters as well, like as in an introduction to the cinematic universe.
Yeah.
More than anything as well, look at the actors you've got in it.
I know, it's an all-star cast coming in.
Absolutely. And I can never say his name properly, but okay, Mikkelsen, the guy who played Hannibal, he was also in the first James Bond film, the first one with Daniel Craig. Yeah. Mikkelsen?
I'm gonna trust you on this one.
Okay, cool. He's fantastic, and he was fantastic in Hannibal, and him as the villain, who we still don't know what villain he's playing. Oh, mate, it's going to be fantastic. Yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch, Tilda Swinton.
I think it's very interesting that the Ancient One isn't your stereotypical Asian Oriental person. They've gone for not only a sex change, but they've gone for a whole ethnicity
change. Look, and that is something that we've kind of had to, there's a big talk about, of course, whitewashing in Hollywood, where, you get Caucasian or Anglo actors or actresses in to play, for non-Anglo casts. But at the same time, I think we're going to see more of a push where characters do change ethnicity. I mean, we saw it in Thor with Idris Elba. We've seen it in Thor with Idris Elba. That's pretty much all that's coming to mind. But you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
I think we will start to see a bit more of diversity in film. I'm hoping as well, where we do start to see some more classic characters, ones that don't have an ethnicity, like ones where they can be other,
Yeah, I mean,
other.
I've got no issue with them breaking the wall. For example, the Ancient One was supposed to be a man.
Yes.
And they've put the cast to, what's her name again?
Tilda Swinton.
Thank you. And which is a nice difference.
Absolutely.
But my concern, if you didn't guess before, was it was sarcastic.
Yeah.
The fact that it is whitewashing.
Oh, totally.
So that is my point.
Oh, look, and that's something that I'm sure there will be perhaps a little bit of a backlash over, except actually we haven't really heard anything about that yet. I think it's because no one really knows the characters that well.
Possibly, but I think I've got a feeling like there'll be diehard fans that will always be complaining. But
of course,
I think it's more so the fact that because it is it's not an all male cast.
Yes,
that it's some form of a diversity now starting to happen.
Absolutely.
I think people are more happy with that.
Yes, absolutely,
and it's an important role too.
Oh, well, it's a key character in the Doctor Strange mythos.
Yeah. So anyway, what I loved about the trailer is like it's a classic teaser. It doesn't really reveal much. It just gives you enough to hook you in. But what hooked me in more than anything is the way I see a lot of influence of Inception.
Yeah, the folding of worlds and whatnot.
I think that's great, and I'm really looking forward to how they use that in the movie, even if it's only a one-off thing that gets thrown out.
Well, I just think it's a great way just to show how his magic can bend the world. I mean, granted, it's his perception of the world. It's not the world itself. But to bend it for him to be able to perform such great feats. You know.
Also during the trailer, the Ancient One mentions that he's looking through the world through a keyhole and it's only one reality.
Yes.
So I'm wondering whether these other worlds that we see through the Inception-inspired type visual is whether it's the many other realities that are out there.
Yep.
So anyway.
That'd be great.
So that being said, I'm looking forward to it and can't wait for it to come out later this year.
Oh, totally. And I think it's so... I mean, we're going to have so many great movies coming out this year as well, and like as in superhero films. So yeah, to add this one to the list. I just want to see, though, something that I kept on thinking when I was watching it. So we had the reference to Stephen Strange in Winter Soldier.
Was there?
Yeah. So they're talking about, high-profile people.
Right.
And he says Stephen Strange. So we can definitely, by the trailer, know that this is going to be a bit of an origin story.
Well, it has to be. How else do you introduce him as this
exactly
character?
So when's it going to be set? Is it going to be set before Winter Soldier? Or is it going to be partially set before Winter Soldier and partially now?
The other question is this movie more him already being in the mantle and it's him having a memory of how he started?
How he got there. Exactly right. So we don't know. So, I mean, I'm interested to see how the story unfolds.
Okay. Anyway, on with the show.
Indeed.
So this week we are looking at the movie Creed.
Yes.
And I've got to say right off the bat, this is probably the first Rocky-related film since Rocky that I've actually been happy to watch.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Because this as well, not only is it it's the first Rocky film in 10 years. I actually thought Rocky Balboa came out a lot later, but actually no, that came out in 2006. It's the first Rocky film in 10 years. But the thing is as well, we've got to remember it's not a Rocky film.
I know technically it's not, but it does involve the characters. So
Absolutely. It's the world, it's the universe.
Yeah.
But no, I kind of, it's funny because I was always a big fan of Rocky 1 through 3. I thought Rocky 1, 2, and 3 were fantastic movies. 4, it wasn't bad. 5, you could forget about that movie.
I'm trying to remember the circumstances of all the Rocky films. So the first one is him just coming up to fame and glory.
Exactly. This one actually, this movie is very much almost echoes the story of the original Rocky, because in Rocky he was an underdog coming up the ranks and he does get this fight with the champ.
Yeah.
And it's very much...
Yeah, I noticed those allegories between the two.
Yes, exactly right.
But with the second one, it was... so in the first film, he loses the fight.
Right. Second film, it's the rematch.
So, okay.
Yeah. And that's where he actually wins the title.
And the third one was that Dolph Lundgren?
No, the third one was Mr. T, and he's been successful in defending the title for quite a while, but now he comes up against someone that he's got an actual challenger, and then it's him winning the title back.
Okay, right.
The fourth one's Dolph Lundgren.
Okay, so that's where it's...
And that's where Apollo Creed
So for
dies.
you, that's where it really...
starts to go down. And number 5 was, he's kind of got brain damage, but not really, partial brain damage.
That's the one where he trains Tommy?
Yes, and, he loses all his fortune and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that Creed itself has, like we said, has a lot of reflections of the first film.
Yes.
Has mentions of the fourth film regarding Apollo Creed dying.
Yes.
But there's not really any mentions of anything in between except for maybe Rocky's trainer. What was his name again? Mickey.
Yeah.
Mickey's passing, which happened in one of the films.
3.
It happened in the third one.
Yeah.
So there's slight mentions of previous films, but it really doesn't focus on any of them except for the first one.
And it's with Apollo Creed.
Yeah.
It really revolves around the stories that Apollo Creed was actually involved in, because obviously we're dealing with his son.
See, to tie the universe off though, because you've mentioned, it mentions the first one mainly, the second one partially, the third one a little bit because it's the death of Apollo.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there wasn't
Fourth one
any...
was Death of Apollo. Third one.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there wasn't a mention of Tommy when it came to Adonis asking
About training.
him. And he's like, no, I don't. The simple explanation was, I don't do that anymore.
And I think that's the thing. They wanted to kind of make it a bit of a throwaway, as in that he has done it before, but he doesn't do it anymore.
But to me, it's more of a case of he's just too old for it. He's,
Absolutely. And that's the thing as well. He is old. And they actually, that's one thing I thought they did really, really well in this, was they actually showed how, yes, he was this great champ, but he's not young anymore. He is an older person. He's become the role of Mickey.
Yeah.
He is this guy who's lived this life, and he is now here to train the next generation. And I thought that was done really, really well. And I actually have to say, one of the things that I loved with this movie was Sylvester Stallone. I thought he was amazing in it.
I was surprised that he didn't, I heard the rumors leading up to the Oscars, and I'm surprised that he didn't get a supporting actor.
Well, he got the nomination.
He got a nomination, but he didn't get it.
No, but he did win the Golden Globe.
All right, so he did get something.
Yeah, he won the Golden Globe for it, and I thought he deserved it. He actually did a fantastic job.
I think he really... See, I've got a feeling he was thinking this would be a ticket back into drama.
Yeah.
And it's come pretty damn close. Like, a lot of people can see how much effort he's put into this.
Yes, yeah.
And I think rightly so, because he does do a great effort in this movie.
Oh, he absolutely does. He also won the Razzie Redeemer Award as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's the Razzie Redeemer Award is where if someone's won a Razzie before for worst something, but they actually think they've done a really good job and redeemed themselves.
But is that for the character of Rocky and the Rocky films?
It's just for in general.
In general.
But it's like, he won it for this movie because they thought that what he did in this movie was really, really good.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's like if he perhaps won I can't remember what he won a Razzie for. I think it may have been Rocky Balboa, one of them. But, he won it. Like they decided to give him the Razzie Redeemer Award in 2016.
Right. I wanted to talk about actually Michael B. Jordan in this movie.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I think he's a talented boy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it really shines in this movie. I mean, he's been in other films, like he was in Fantastic Four, and granted, the script wasn't too great in that one.
We can ignore that.
Yeah, well,
It didn't happen.
Still, he does well in that one.
Yeah.
Mind you, the character wasn't that great. But then you go to Chronicle.
Oh, yes.
And, even though his character doesn't stay long in this movie, he really gives it his all in Chronicle as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And Chronicle was the movie that actually made me realise who this person is.
Oh, yeah.
And so whatever else he's been in, coming through in cinema, whenever I see his name, I'm really excited because I know this kid is there to act and like really give it his all and wants to really make a name for himself. And I think Creed is a good vessel for that.
Oh, you know what? And I think as well, exactly. And especially as him as the leading man. Because, whenever you're the leading man in a movie, you've got to carry the movie, basically. Because it's your performance that's going to actually push it to being a great performance or being, a great movie or a mediocre movie. And he did a great performance. So really, he deserves a lot of credit for this film. Because I think if it was another actor, would I have enjoyed it as much? I don't know. And I have to say, I totally agree. Him in Chronicle was amazing. A movie he was in called Fruitvale Station, which he also did with Ryan Coogler, who was the director of this film. He was fantastic in as well.
I haven't seen that movie.
It's good. It's like basically a Bay Area resident. He kind of crosses paths with people, enemies, friends, family. And it's kind of his journey.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's a very good, it's almost like a biopic.
Now, I found it rather interesting when I can't remember who played Apollo Creed's wife in the original films.
It was not Mrs. Huxtable.
Okay, I was about to say.
Yeah. I know when I saw it, when she first comes on the screen, like, hey, it's Mrs. Huxtable. Was she in the originals?
Right,
no, it was
so you checked it.
I did. I checked it. It was an unknown in the originals who played his wife.
Right.
And in this, it was Mrs. Huxtable.
I got to say, it was nice to see her acting again.
It was great, and she's fantastic as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to say that opening scene with her coming to the prison, I thought, like the juvenile detention center, I actually thought at that point she was his mother.
That's what I thought, and I thought it was rather interesting the way the dialogue was being played out.
Yeah.
That my mother was it that his mother abandoned him?
No, she passed.
She passed away, and then he was thrown in from foster care.
To foster care, yeah, and he gets into fights, and
I found that rather interesting, and I'm like, don't you know who your mother is? Clearly, like, you know, and it took me a little while to realize his father was just, you know, was an adulterer, and
yeah, exactly right,
and he is the product of a love affair.
Exactly.
And it took me a little while to realize that. And I found it interesting that when we see him as an adult, that isn't going by his father's name, that he's going by his stepmother's name.
Yes. Well, he's going by, because Johnson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's going by, well, that's his mother's name.
Is it his mother's name or is it his stepmother's name?
No, his stepmom, who like Mrs. Creed, is Mrs. Creed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he's going by his mother's name.
Yeah, he's going by that. Like, he loves Mary Ann. Like, he absolutely and adores her like a mother. Because if you essentially think about it, she saved him.
Okay. I was getting confused that was her maiden name.
No. So that's his mother's name. So he didn't want to be recognized as just being Apollo Creed's son.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great little story arc as well, that he wanted to make it on his own. But of course, how's he end up getting notoriety is by being Apollo Creed.
By claiming it.
Yeah, exactly right. But he didn't want to. That's the thing I loved in that as well. And I think that's something that this movie, I think, really does well, because if it would be a very boring movie if it's just like, I'm Apollo Creed's son, I'm going to get a title fight. Oh, now I've won. 20 minutes later, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the writers clearly thought what would be a good struggle for this kid.
Exactly right. And so struggling with his past, struggling with his name, struggling with everything. And I love the fact as well that, you know, you see him as an adult when you first see him. He's in Tijuana and he's doing these semi-pro fights.
Yeah.
But unaware to anyone else.
Well, I find that interesting because you say it's unaware to everyone else, yet the trainer digs up all this information.
That's true. And his mum did know as well when she goes, how'd you get that in Mexico? So they did know he was doing it. It's more, I think he was trying to hide, fact that he was trying to hide it.
Now, what I find an interesting development is that he doesn't want his father's name, but yet it's not so much that he doesn't want his father's name. I think it's the fact that he's got so much pent up anger of being what I can imagine is being left alone.
Yes.
That he's scared of what he will actually become of himself and potentially taint his father's name.
Well, see, I think actually more because, and we do get this at the end as well, because remember how he says, I just don't want to be a mistake.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing as well where he's probably lived this whole life, especially after being, his mother dying, not knowing who his father was for a very long time, that he wasn't wanted. He was a mistake. He wasn't.
And the feeling of being abandoned.
He was abandoned, but then it wasn't actually that at all that, that was his inner feeling.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if Apollo Creed was alive, and I think Sly says that as well, like Rocky says that to him, it's like, I know he'd rather be here with you. And he would.
Yeah.
But he didn't know he existed. Because, and he died he died before he was even born.
Yeah. So the other thing is we don't even know whether, even if he was around, whether he would own up to having a son.
We don't know. We don't know. We assume that he would have been a good guy and done that, especially this considering his wife, his widow,
is a good enough person to take him in.
Takes him, exactly right, takes him in, educates him, gives him a good life, loves him like a son.
Yeah.
You'd think that he would as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the because this movie actually mirrors a lot of the original.
Yes. Very nostalgic.
Very nostalgic. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, that was actually one of my notes in what I liked about it was I actually really love the fact that it was nostalgic.
What I found, what I liked is also seeing the differences in the time period. So, for example, in the original film, you see him chasing the chickens and doing the running on the street and so forth. Certain things don't change. So, running on the street is still running on the street.
Exactly.
But what I like is that the way that Rocky, the character Rocky, remembers chasing after the chickens and having such a hard time.
Yeah.
And obviously through montage, you see your character develop.
Yeah.
And so seeing Adonis end up being really quick at it, and he's like, just the little sort of jokes on the way he remembers things.
Yeah.
I think it was a nice character touch. And like the whole, for example, with the chickens, it's that when he catches it, he's like, I remember these chickens were a lot faster.
Yeah,
they're getting slower.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think the chickens are getting slower. I thought that was good as well. I like it when he first shows him the chicken. He goes, I'll get this in like 30 seconds. He's like, hey, yeah, right.
yeah. So there's, I like that to progress forward, you have to go back.
Exactly.
And go back to basics.
Yep.
And I also like the character struggle for Stallone to you see that everyone important in his life has left him.
Yes.
Right? So whether it's through death or their own circumstances in life, for example, his son doesn't even contact him so much anymore.
Yeah, because his son now lives in Vancouver and...
and I find it interesting how he's become a hermit.
Yeah.
And he's got his little restaurant that belonged to his wife and he continues to run it and that's it.
Yeah.
And he pretty much gives up on life. I mean...
Well, he hasn't given up on life. It's more I think he wants the quiet life. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight.
Or is it that he's satisfied with his life?
I think that's more it. He's happy to be quiet.
Because the reason I ask is because when the character becomes aware of a health problem...
Yep.
So
he's willing to end.
Right. So he's diagnosed with cancer.
Yep.
But he's not willing to do anything about it, and only because the story they give of how his wife died is that he doesn't want to go through the same thing that she went through.
Yeah.
So he's more than happy, content to just let it slowly kill him.
Yeah, and I think it's more as well. See, what I got from that though is more not that he was happy to die. It's more though I think he'd prefer to enjoy the life that he had left with Adonis, training him, doing that stuff. But at the same time, I don't think he truly realized that he had someone there. You know, he thought, my friend Paulie, who's now gone, well, I get to see my friend Paulie. My wife, who's gone, I get to see my friend, my wife.
Right.
I think he didn't truly realize how much Adonis cared for him. And so I think it's not that he was willing to give up. I just think he realized, he's like, oh, well, who will miss me?
And that's another thing with Adonis. Initially I thought that he would have been really angry with Rocky for being responsible for his father's death.
Yeah, but
I think it's more so that he cares about Rocky more so because it's the only real connection he has to his father who's still around.
Absolutely. Because even though he's got his stepmom, it's not the same because you remember as well that Adonis is a fighter, so he wants someone that's got that connection.
Yeah.
And who better than his greatest opponent could you have?
Yeah.
And also really who he was, because at the end, when I say that in the series of the movies, Rocky and Apollo were the best of friends.
Yeah.
And so, and exactly. He blames himself already for not stopping that fight, so he doesn't need, his son. Oh, when did I say his son? Adonis also blaming him as well.
So I found that to be an interesting turn for Adonis. Like initially I thought he was just selfish and wanted to... It's clear. He just wants to fight, right?
Yes.
So he feels that he's been fighting all his life. He does want to follow his dad's footsteps and become a fighter.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting that we knew that Rocky would be involved in some way, shape or form.
Of course.
But I would have thought it would have been another similar turn, for example, like with the previous person he tried to train that backstabbed him and went with another trainer in the end and gave that guy all the credit.
Yeah.
But I actually like the fact that it didn't go that avenue, and I like the fact that it is a genuine story about just discovery.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about this movie. It was predictable, but it was wholesome.
Yes, and I think I know what you mean there, and I think it's where, once again, going back to that nostalgia, because if you go back to the nostalgia of the original film, it was Rocky, this underdog from the mean streets of Philadelphia, with his older colleagues and his older trainers, and they were all helping him out the best they could, and they're all doing the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was great with this as well, is that you have this rich boy who has got a lot of, granted, he grew up poor. It was only until he got saved out of, at 10 years old, out of juvie, that he actually that he got things. So I think he knows the struggle a little bit, and I think he's not, he's not willing. I think it's also his connection to Rocky. He realized he wasn't trying to live under Rocky's shadow. He wasn't trying to live under his dad's shadow, really. He was trying to make it for himself. Yeah. So he was willing to strive just like Rocky did. Hence
him trying to come out with his mother's name rather than Creed.
Exactly right. And I absolutely love that at the end with the boxes. Like with the...
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
I thought that was a great touch. That was really good. And great that was from his mum as well. That was good. Or his stepmom.
Yeah, I thought... Because initially she's all against the whole boxing thing. And clearly...
She saw what it did to her husband.
Yeah, exactly right. And you knew she was going to come around at some point or another.
Yeah.
It's one of those old classic sort of rooting for that person that when you've always had like an issue with them doing that particular thing, but you still support them because you love them.
exactly.
And then when they succeed in something, they're there chanting, but no one can hear them chant.
Yeah.
And it like
How she was yelling at the TV. Going, I loved it.
Like it pulls at the heartstrings, and I did find it emotional.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a nice somber moment.
Yes.
And
see, once again, that was almost the, going back to, once again, nostalgia. The Adrian, she was the same. She didn't want Rocky to do it. She thought it was stupid. She didn't, and whatnot.
I think it's also not so much the characters or the story itself. I think it's the way this story is told is also nostalgic.
Yes.
Your classic montages of training and building up, and also the character developments are much the same as any other sort of story like this.
Because it's a semi-action as well, but it's that whole sports action film.
Yeah.
Where, exactly, you've got the montage of them getting better, striving. The use of the original music
cool.
was really good as well. And I thought that use, because it really had you going, he's running down the street and the bikes are after, he's running with the bikes.
He tells them to chase him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got the same song of Rocky, striving higher, running fast. Oh, I was like, yeah, go Creed.
The way this movie is told is also nostalgic.
Yeah.
And
it's that classic.
And it's not to do with Rocky itself. It's to do with the era that Rocky was originally released.
Absolutely.
And the way movies were told in that time and subsequently thereafter.
Yes.
And I think that helps with this story as well.
Oh, I think it does too. Speaking though of now going into a little bit more modern, because obviously modern movies, so now we've got the fantastic, changes in technology, so sound effects and, visual effects and whatnot as well. Yeah. One thing that I have to say, like Ryan Coogler as a director, he's very good. But one thing I thought was great is the action sequences, like the actual fighting sequences.
Yeah.
Man, you felt that. I was sitting there at times going, holy, like when he's getting punched or when he's punching.
The head snap back.
Oh, the whole thing. I felt like I was in the ring with him and I was taking those hits.
I find it's also with the use of subtle sound effects. That it's not your old school sort of biff, bam, pow.
Yeah. Or the good
type, you know what I mean?
Or the slap kind of sound. Yeah.
Sort of sound.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it was subtle use of sound work that helped push it along with obviously music and so forth. I found more than anything what was really sort of driving home the intensity of the last fight.
Oh, yeah.
Is when the eye is swelling up and it's happening right in front of the referee.
Yeah.
And it's so subtle, but before you know it, his eye is actually closed up in front of the camera.
Yes.
So whether it's CG or a bit of prosthetic, however they did it, it was nicely done and it helps. Those little touches really help sort of drive how ferocious the fight can really be.
Oh, absolutely. How ferocious one boxing is as like a sport. It's actually funny. Every time I watch a boxing movie, I'm not a fan of boxing. I actually think I can't believe that it's a sport that is still that fucking popular, that we want to see two people beat their heads in for 30 minutes.
Well, it's the last of the gladiatorial fighting. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But there's that. But exactly, like it showed the brutality of it, the pain. Like, oh my God, his face looks, at the end of that fight, it looked like hell. He looked like he was in a shit ton of pain. But, that's that whole thing as well. In these movies, these action kind of sports movies, it's the striving through the pain, it's the fighting on, it's the getting up, it's the keep on going, which he does. And I thought that was a very good touch. And I think those visual and those sound effects just showed how hard what he was doing was. It made you feel it and it made you really kind of almost want to give him a high five for it.
What I loved about the actual last fight as well is the way that the fight is actually cut together.
Yeah.
It is a large portion of towards the back end of the film, but it's not, aside from maybe the first two rounds where they establish in the first round the opponent. Conlon is like obviously the champ. He's there to defend. He's got the experience.
Yep, he is actually a much more experienced and skilled fighter.
Yeah, a more competent fighter.
Yeah.
Whereas in the second round, Adonis has the chance to, sort of level the playing field and say, hey, I'm here for a reason.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than it's not my name that you're after.
Which is also a very Rocky one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like we said, there's so many allegories between the two.
Yeah.
But I say allegories, I do mean there's a lot of reflections between the two.
Yeah.
after that moment, after those 2 rounds that are, even on screen time, they're shorter than 3 minutes, but they feel long enough to actually be real rounds.
Yes.
And then after that, the way it's cut is just a montage of the actual fight and all the rounds, and they actually managed to push it all the way to the 12th round.
Exactly, where they thought it was going to be over in the second. Well, the Conlon thought it was going to be done in the second.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, 12 rounds later, it's a point decision.
Because you remember Rocky better than I do. Did that happen in Rocky? Did they go all the way?
Yeah, they went all the way.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Someone correct me, but I'm pretty positive it went all the way. It was the same thing as well. It was a split decision.
Right.
And Apollo won.
Yeah.
In the first one, yeah.
So it's funny. We've seen 2 movies this year that directly relate the original.
Yeah.
So you've got Rocky and Creed.
Yeah.
And then you've got Star Wars: A New Hope
and
Force Awakens.
Very true.
Right? Well, I say this year. It actually came out late last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is the other one this year?
But yeah, and funnily enough, with Star Wars, we loved that movie too.
Oh, exactly.
And we clearly saw what it was reflecting and was practically the same movie of. Creed is virtually the same thing. The only real differences in the movies is that the character from the first movie is now a much older character who has to learn to deal with life in a different way.
Yes.
And that's really his. I have to say, like, aside from Adonis being the main focus, I think the actual main character of this movie is Rocky.
And it's so funny that you said that, because I had the same conversation with my girlfriend, and that's exactly what we thought as well. We're like, as much as it was, Adonis was the main character, you could almost say that Rocky was the secondary main character, because it was his journey from not wanting to be in the spotlight, wanting to comfortably live out the rest of his life.
I'd even
to kind of striving for more.
I'd even say not so much that he didn't want to be in the spotlight. It's just coming to terms with that what he used to be to what he is now to what he is going to become if he takes on this kid.
Yeah.
And I think it's all of that plus the fact that knowing who this kid really is, who he's related to, and what sort of attention that's going to bring. I think all of that mixed into the bag together, I think that's what makes Rocky's journey actually a rather interesting one.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, like, the way that they portray Rocky in this movie, he is more so the main focus.
Oh, totally.
Which is funny because somehow they equally share it.
Yes, they do. But see, I think as well, it doesn't take away the focus. Even though it is Rocky, it doesn't take away from Creed, because I think they worked so well together. Yeah. That him in the trainer role and then Creed as the fighter role, I think it just worked. It was a great team. It was a great team effort. It was a good partnership, and that's why as well I think the movie went so as well as it did in the portraying of the journey of Rocky as well. Yeah, I also just a little tidbit. It's not all that important, but I do like how I did like how Adonis's character is such a brash, angry person deep inside that all these decisions are brash. Yes. And he so easily gets upset, and even so at Rocky, because he's not training him. And it's like, well, I am training you. Yeah. I'm watching what you're doing. Yeah. It's just I'm too old. I can't do this shit anymore. Yeah. But they can help you. Like we were saying before, getting the other trainers in that can help and have their particular skills to help him. Exactly. He's like, better. I can't do the gloves anymore, but he can, and he can. And he's one of the best glove men around. And I think it's nice. Not that it means anything in this discussion, but I just think that was a nice little touch in Rocky's character. Yeah, I think it was as well. And I think that was also good to show his age, because, I mean, if we take it as to what the actual age of Sylvester Stallone, he's 70 now. Yeah. So that's, let's say he's still able to do a lot considering his age. Oh, absolutely. I mean, he bulked the hell up for this movie. Oh, totally. Absolutely. And I agree with that too. I mean, if you look at the last, which was only 3 years ago, Expendables film. Yeah. And I mean, just recently, someone asked him whether he was going to do another Rambo film. Yes. And he turned around and he just simply said, the mind says yes, but the body says no. Yeah. And I think he was referring to his knees. Yeah, I think he was just also with in general, how your body can't just do things like that anymore. Exactly right. And I mean, it's also time to pass the mantle on. If they want to do a Rambo movie and reset it, fine. But, even potentially have him as a cameo somewhere. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's funny because we grew up with so many action heroes, mainly
Sly and Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And to see them both age the way they have been.
Yeah.
And some of them are still trying to get big into movies and others aren't so much. But it's funny to see how they've kind of got no choice but to really hand it off now.
Yeah.
Kind of like...
It's like pass the mantle.
Yeah, I was thinking more so the film that they did together. No, I think it's No Escape or...
Oh, yeah, the one that they're in the jail. They only did that a few years ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, that was the first movie they ever worked together in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wasn't Expendables...
No, that came after.
Expendables 1?
Schwarzenegger was never in.
Yeah, he was.
he?
Yeah, he was in the first one, but he was only in it for like 2 seconds. He had a cameo.
Ah, okay. Then that's the order that it happened. So he had a bit role in that, but they never actually starred in an action together, like action scenes together.
Yeah, no.
That's where the Escape movie came in.
Okay. But going to, like you were saying, saying with his age and whatnot, that how he's got to pass the mantle somehow. I think that was a good thing that this movie did, because having him as the trainer, it also... that's where I was going to go with this, sorry. Did you think he was going to die?
Rocky?
Yeah.
I had my thoughts that he was.
Yeah, I thought he was going to die as well.
I'm quite happy that he didn't.
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that the drive that Adonis is pushing on him, that if I fight, you fight with me.
Yeah, that was good, actually.
And I like that character development had pushed him enough to see that life is still worth fighting for.
Yes. And that's exactly right as well. It's like that life is worth fighting for and that you can do it.
Yeah, I just quickly looked it up. It's Escape Plan.
Okay.
So that's the movie where the two of them actually finally sort of had an action scene together in.
Oh,
and I remember watching a quick doco on it, like a little TV snippet, where Schwarzenegger was really happy to actually be working with him as a colleague rather than a rival.
Yeah.
And I mean, the characters are still boasting as rivals within the movie itself.
Yeah. I haven't seen it.
But the fact that they're working together in a movie, rather than competing movie by movie,
which that's exactly what what they've
80s
been
doing all their career.
Yeah.
And that itself was Schwarzenegger was really happy to be involved with.
Yeah.
And it's funny seeing these two actors in particular are aging, that I kind of wish that it happened sooner.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think that's where we're going to be for the next few years as well, seeing that these actors that we grew up with starting to retire or phase out, which is fine. That's what you do. You pass the mantle.
Yeah, of course.
Rocky 1 came out.
Despite the fact that, the part of the reason why the Expendables movies were created in the first place as well.
Total nostalgia.
Is total nostalgia, but it's also the body shape of action heroes have changed.
Oh, yeah.
And the definition of what an action hero is definitively changing as well.
Yeah.
So by and large, they're by the wayside now.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We say when you got them next to Terry Crews, it's kind of like, whoa, here we go.
Well, even Terry Crews, he's too big.
Yeah.
He's got his moments, and he's a comedic actor anyway.
Yeah.
And that particular body shape comes in handy, especially on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. That's so good.
But what I mean is, like, take a look at, for example, like we've talked about it many times before, but take a look at the Marvel films. Have a look at your action stars.
Yeah.
You've got Robert Downey Jr. He's not cut. He's not overly fit.
Yeah.
Right? He's physical, but he doesn't have to be.
Well, and actually more, you look at, say, for example, Paul Rudd, who did get into shape. Like, he's in shape. He's not, oh my God, he's not huge and muscular.
Yeah, no.
He's just in shape.
Yeah, he's in shape and cut.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, action films have just not digressed. They've changed over the years.
Yeah.
The requirements to be an action star aren't the same anymore.
No, exactly right.
So, anyway, we've gone way off topic.
We have.
But in saying so, that was my point before. It's just to see how Sly Stallone has aged, and the way they've developed this character around his past, his present, and where he could potentially go with the character.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we actually now have the sense, of course he didn't pass away, of what's the future hold for Creed and Rocky.
Do we know if there's a slated sequel?
Yes, it's already been approved. I don't know. I don't think it started filming, but it's already been greenlit.
Okay.
So it will be happening. So exactly, we'll probably see in the next one that will have Rocky training Creed and going more for the actual championship.
I also suspect that the second film is where we're going to say goodbye to Rocky.
I think it will be as well, because that'll actually be the part, once again, not only the passing of the mantle of the actor, but more the passing of the mantle of the character, going, you're the champ now.
Yeah.
And passing it on, which is fine. I think that's fantastic. I think that's really, that'll be great to actually, not to reboot or not to reset, but to continue in a new direction.
Yeah. I wanted to quickly throw this back to supporting characters.
Yes.
All right. So we mentioned his stepmother.
Yes. Mrs. Huxtable.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask was, what did we think of the girlfriend?
Yes. Tessa. Tessa is the actress's name.
Tessa Thompson is the actress's name, and the character's name is Bianca.
Bianca, that's right. Whom I remember from Veronica Mars. She was in Veronica Mars.
Right.
What I think of the character, look, you could have put anyone there. I think he needed a love interest. You could have put anyone there. I don't think it was as strong a character as, say, Adrian was in the Rocky, because Adrian in the Rocky films was, he could not live without her. It was his kind of his rock, his motivation. It was a very strong character for him. This one, he loved her, and yes, he wanted to be with her. Was it a strong character in the sense that it drove him to continue on? No.
Yeah, it's not that I found her flat per se.
Yeah.
She was, but it wasn't that. There was something about both her and Michael B. Jordan just not having chemistry together.
I think that's what I mean, is in you could have put anyone there and it would have been better. But see, was that the fault of the actress? Was that the fault of them? Or was that the fault of the direction and the character written? Who knows?
I don't know. Like, the relationship in the film itself is a little strange. And I think that in partly is to do with why we're not feeling charisma between the two. And I say charisma, but it's not the right word.
Yeah, but it is a little bit, because, you want chemistry, you want some form of bonding, you want something going on.
I'm more thinking chemistry anyway.
Yeah.
So because of the relationship being weird, where he's keeping a lot of secrets in the beginning, and her secret is that she's actually going deaf.
Yes.
And the way she interprets the world is changing.
Yep.
That she's kind of standoffish and she's trying to be cool and this musician and...
Yeah, but see, and I didn't really care about that at all.
I didn't care about that at all either.
Yeah.
But I think that is supposed to play into her obscurity.
Yeah.
And in which turn is the relationship starts off a little bit strange and weird, and it becomes hard to follow, and them falling in love doesn't really echo to me.
It makes her...
It also partially seems hollow.
Yeah, and I think it makes her character easily expendable.
Yeah.
Because let's say, okay, she didn't rate very well with people, then in number 2 he could have a new love interest, and you could try that out, and that's fine, because you didn't care about the character that much. The
main reason why I'm asking this or bringing this up is because when they have their fight, like the standard romance side of the story is that you have a fight and you need to come back together. I think it was nice and touching the way that Rocky sort of sets up her to come back into the story, where he's politely asked her off camera. But when we see her, I feel nothing. And it's a shame, because the rest of the movie is quite good. And I think where it falls apart is just with those two as in relationship with each other.
Yeah.
There's not enough chemistry between the two that when they break up, understandably, she breaks it off with him for what happens in the fight.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I understand that dichotomy and the way that plays out. But when we see her again, I literally don't feel anything.
Yeah, exactly. You don't care. You do not care at all. And look, you know what? And that's where actually I go more of, yeah, she's expendable. You don't care about her. You don't really care what goes on. That actually brings me to another point as well. And that's where, did you find in this movie, like, of course that was so flat, that other parts of this movie were really flat as well? Like, I remember, this was like a 2-hour film.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I was thinking it last night when I was watching this movie.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me then, but I completely forgot about it until you just brought it up now. And it's the ramp-up time in this movie.
Yeah.
Is huge.
Yes.
It takes nearly 45 minutes to get anywhere in this movie.
Yes, exactly right. And it means that you've got these really low points. A lot of it is that silly, or not silly, but useless exposition between Bianca and Adonis, where you kind of don't care about it, which means then the movie's flat and it kind of goes into this real slow point.
Yeah.
And that's where actually, for me, I kind of felt like you could have cut 30 minutes out of this movie and made it short. And
it would have been a much tighter movie.
Much tighter film, and it would have flowed a lot better. Now, is that fault of the direction? Is that fault of the script? Don't know.
Not too sure on this one. I think being that this movie is full of montages, you could have probably done a montage of dating.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they fall in love, and that probably would have had a greater effect.
Yeah.
Then that's probably why I don't feel chemistry between these two, because every time they're together, there's nothing happening story-wise.
No, exactly right. And then it does, and the movie slows down, and next thing you know, we need to now, get back into the actual action scenes or get back into the actual narrative of him becoming the person he is.
Yeah, and with other movies where the narration takes so long to get anywhere, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose interest. But for some reason, this movie did not make me lose interest.
I tell you why, and this is what, how you said it took 45 minutes? So they'd have these moments where in that 45 minutes for anything to happen, there's probably about, say, 10 minutes that you didn't need in that little period. Yeah. But it was kind of bookended. It was bookended with something that's important to story, lull, something that's important to story. So it kind of keeps on. So you go through a dip. If you had to look at it on a graph, it'd be like piqued my interest, dropping interest, piqued my interest, dropping interest. So you're kind of continuously going up and down.
I think there's also those quick moments of where he is trying to gauge people, not gauge, but trying to pull people into a fight.
Yes.
And I think those little moments as well is what sort of keeps your interest in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not directly related to character development either.
No, exactly. It's very slow. It's kind of off-putting.
I think it's also the fact that because we know this is essentially a sporting movie and to do with boxing, that we are waiting for a damn fight.
Yeah, exactly right. With an action film, you're waiting for the action.
Yeah.
The narrative is kind of a supporting part of that, but in a smaller amount. But though, depending on how well it's made, which this movie was, it can kind of peak and you can get back into it a little bit more. Yeah, and that's just something I thought, they could have, 30, I think if this movie was 30 minutes less, it would have been pretty interesting.
I agree with you on that one. I think if the editing was a little bit tighter, mainly to do with the relationship, discovering like a new love and all that, if that was cut in a different way, I think this movie would stand better.
Yes.
Than it currently does. But in saying so, this movie is really worth a watch.
Oh, totally. I totally agree.
And I'm going to throw my rating out now. Like this movie is really good for the series.
Yeah.
It really is a shot in the arm that it desperately needed if it was to ever continue. And what I also like is that given that the characters that we've grown up with have aged, it is time to pass the mantle, but it's nice not to get rid of them.
No, it's not disregarding them and saying that they didn't exist. It's more, like I said before, it's going in a new direction.
Yeah, and what I like is the fact that being there's so much history with Rocky, that he is now passing that information on, but in a way that he's also learning and developing at the same time. There's still his character development alongside it.
Yep.
Like we just mentioned, the only lulls in the movie is practically the ramp up time.
Yep.
And the dating moments with this love interest, which I just don't think it quite works.
No, totally. And I agree with you there. I really do. I mean, I think. Oh, look, you said you were going to give your rating.
Yeah, I'm ready to give my rating on this one.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what. You give your rating and then I'll chime in.
So, personally, for those points that I just said, I'm going to give this 3 bananas.
That's a pretty good idea.
All right, Heath.
Yeah, so basically, look, I agree with you on so many of those points. And as we did discuss as well, the lull points, like with the relationship, I thought you could maybe, if you're going to put something in there, why don't we see more of Conlon, like his opponent? Like, here's this villain that you kind of feels a little bit of sympathy for, like towards the end, because you're like, okay, he's done some stupid shit and whatnot. He's still a dickhead, he's still an idiot, but it would be good to get to know him better, like we did get to know Apollo in the first Rocky film.
That is a very good point. We barely see him.
Barely see him.
And every time we see him, he's just a prick.
Exactly. He's either just a prick, or we hear these parts where he's like, you know, he's okay, he wants to do good by his family and whatnot, except he's still made some stupid fucking decisions. And, well, you know what? That's something we could have developed a little bit more in the story, make us feel for him a little bit more. So that way, when it comes to the end, even though he does win, we kind of understand why he also does the good old, oh, mate, you've proved yourself, so, you know, you're with me now. Because that kind of made that point a little bit moot.
Yeah, and it also was almost out of place.
Almost out of place, except once again, that's going back to the nostalgia of the first film, where that was what happened with Apollo and Rocky. And anyway, so it's kind of hitting that little heartstring. But, you know, Michael B. Jordan, he was great. Sylvester Stallone, he was brilliant. And I actually, now seeing this, has made me very excited to see Ryan Coogler's direction of Black Panther.
All right.
Yeah, so he's doing the Marvel film Black Panther, so I'll be very keen to see his version of that. I think if he does the action scenes like he's done in this film, you're going to feel
I reckon
what's
they'll
going
be
on.
nice and visceral and really into your face.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I too am going to give this 3 bananas.
Oh, wow. So we are unanimous.
Yes, we are in agreement.
Right, ding, ding.
That's the end of round 12.
All right, guys. We are Theatre Gorillas, and don't forget to stay tuned for the end of the theme song for this week's movie, Who Am I? Bye.
See ya.
All right, so you've stayed on to find out what this week's movie, Who Am I, is, and the answer is...
Watchmen.
From 2009, from Zack
was
Snyder.
Probably one of, like what we did mention before, I do think that this is probably Zack Snyder's. I actually think it's maybe his best film.
I'm definitely going to put it out there and say that it is.
Yeah, look,
I know there will be
it.
some haters on that, but I just think it is a really well told film.
Yeah, it's well done. It's got good acting in it. It looks good. I mean, visually, it's stunning. I give it a thumbs up. I actually give it 2. If I had a third thumb, no, that's a bit overkill.
Well, if you're Dr. Manhattan, you could pull it off.
Oh, if I was Dr. Manhattan, I'd have
15.
I'd have one of me over there, one of me over here, one of me jacking off in the corner, whatever I want.
Ew. So long as the other 12 of you clean it up.
Yeah, exactly. With my massive blue schlong. But seriously, that's one of the biggest memories I have of this movie is just a massive blue dick.
It just flops out there.
Flopping around.
All the YouTube videos that followed of people like doing, or Facebook videos, I should say, of people like doing the same thing and like turning themselves blue on camera. And, my God, that was horrible. Anyway, the movie is decent. You should watch it.
Yeah, you definitely should give it a watch.
All right. We are Theatre Gorillas. We'll catch you next week. Actually, no.
No, in a fortnight.
In a fortnight.
We're in the fortnight format now.
That's right. So you'll catch us in a fortnight.
Yes, in a fortnight.
Fortnight.
Yeah, in Australia we call that a fortnight.
A fortnight.
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you next week.
This podcast is recorded and produced by Theatre Gorillas. Edited by Dan Clark.
It occurred to me then, and I completely forgot about it. Let me do that again. Jesus Christ.